shit! This is really fast! Today's all about the single malt whiskey. Why is single malt whiskey such a big deal? Or at least why is it perceived to be a big deal?
Yes.
So we got tons of questions from the magnificent bastards in the whiskey tribe. We're gonna go through those in just a minute because there were a surprising number of questions. I asked a question like a couple hours ago. And then
it just flooded.
Okay. Yes, so many.
So what is single malt?
Yes, let's start there.
Okay.
What is it? What does it mean?
Single malt Scotch is what we're going to talk about. In America, its meaning is very different.
Okay.
In Scotland, single malt Scotch, which is where the term originates, by the way.
So when people say single malt, they're usually
they almost always mean Scotland. Now that is slowly changing as more and more American craft distillers make a single malt.
Fair enough. But so, for the most part, it's still known as a Scotchy thing.
Yeah, if you walk and say, hey, you got any single malts? They're gonna look for Scotch. They're not gonna look for an American single malt.
Fine.
Now, speaking of which, would you like a single malt?
Give me the singlest of malts. The most single malt.
I'm gonna start with Abanar from Abalur, the sherried, and casks, like roughly cask strength. 61% alcohol. Abalur.
That'll get you there.
Abanar.
That'll get you there.
So here's the thing. In Scotland, single malt simply means...
It smells lovely.
One distillery's product, only made from barley. Whiskey in a pot still is the traditional flavor of Scotch whiskey. It's what Scotch whiskey's known for. It's what Scotland's always been known for. And so you're getting the truest heritage spirit that the country has to provide. Right now, a pot still is shaped like a pot.
Why would single malt classification care what kind of still is in?
It totally changes the flavor. It's slower.
From barley?
It's slower than column, and it maintains chemicals and congeners and things that add to the taste that column stills strip out. It all has to do with taste and or efficiency. So column still use column still because it's unbelievably efficient. Essentially what single means, it came from one distillery. So why is it special? You get to taste one singular product made at one distillery with no adulteration. This is the purest essence of that distillery.
Why is there this perception?
Why is it sought after?
Well, it's sought after because you'll watch TV shows.
Or more prized.
And movies. And anytime there's a whiskey that's in the scene and somebody says, can I pour you a glass?
Yeah, it's a single malt.
Single malt.
Yes.
And then the other person goes,
oh yes. Well,
single malt.
One of the things that's harder to, well, not as much anymore, but it was harder to get single malt whiskey up until the last 10, 15 years. Because it was smaller batches traditionally. Not with the big brands, but, and the distribution wasn't that great. And so in America, it was really easy to get things like Johnny Walker or Chivas. And it was really hard to get single malts from some of the smaller distilleries.
So this was actually sought after. And if you were able to get a single malt, then it came from a place where it used to be a special thing.
Think of it like this: being able to get real Texas brisket. When you live down the street from Salt Lick, we don't freak out about it. We're like, oh, that's really good. Right? But when you fly in to Texas from Canada and you're like, before we leave, we will eat Texas barbecue. it's that
So
kind of a situation.
Let's reverse that a little bit. In Scotland, is single malt Scotch as big of a deal there as it is?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so they
they still prize it. Right?
Fair
now
enough.
they don't turn their nose up at blends as much, by and large, as Americans tend to.
Now that's the crux of the whole thing. Because whenever I run into a person who fancies themselves a whiskey aficionado, more times than I care to admit, that person is like, oh, I love whiskey, but I only drink single malt Scotch.
I only drink the single malt.
Right, because they're saying it in such a way like, well, this is of course the pinnacle of whiskey achievement.
That person is missing out.
Yes, because having done several hundred whiskeys at this point, single malt is capable of magnificence. So is blended whiskeys. Doesn't bite my tongue as I say this. There's been some amazing rise. Bourbons and Irish. There's fantastic, tremendous whiskeys that are not single malt at all. They're just glorious, and whatever they did to get it to that point.
So we teach this in the school, but that is that all purchasing is identity reinforcement. So there is some level of, I purchase single malt because what I think it says about me. Now there are people who genuinely prefer single malt, obviously, but by and large that kind of reaction is, it means something to them when they say, "Oh, I only drink single malt."
Yes.
That they want you to think about them.
Right.
Now, I think there's a little misnomer about blended that it's crappy. But if you remember this thing, you remember how you guys say,
Just had some glorious blends.
yeah. If you find a budget and bad tasting scotch, it's probably a blended scotch.
Sure.
However, not all blended scotch is budget or bad. Compass Box is making art.
Yeah.
Right?
It's blended.
Like the same way a chef has an award-winning restaurant, John Glazer is blending whiskeys to the glory of all.
So I asked the tribe, what questions do you have about single malt? The very first question was from Jeffrey Price. Why is it so damn tasty? And then the question...
Because angels.
The grains, the 4 different grains are the primary grains being used. Is barley considered like the premium, like the high end of those grains?
No.
Is there something about barley that lends itself to more nuance and complexity?
Depends on where you are. There's a lot more corn in the world than there is barley, and so corn's cheaper. Barley was just traditionally what they used.
Okay.
And so it's the traditional flavor of scotch, and they stay to that because that's...
But is
you
there,
change that, you make this out of corn, it's not going to taste anything like this.
is there something about the intrinsic quality of what barley can do once it's malted that lends itself to...
The answer would only be yes
and...
if you prefer the barley flavors.
If you prefer...
Like, for example, I've got a third half of my graduated songs who call themselves, as a group, Team Bourbon.
Yeah.
And then the other half call themselves Team Scotch. Yeah, I would be hard-pressed to convince Team Bourbon that barley is inherently a better grain for spirits.
Sure.
Because they love bourbon made from corn.
Yeah.
So there's not an objective yes or no to that.
Okay.
It's just, what do you like the flavors dominantly that barley gives? Then yes.
Ian Harris wants to know how many regions of the world make a single malt whiskey. You mentioned America's trying to get their definition together. Is Scotland the only place where they have hard and fast rules?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, Ireland too.
Ireland has a...
Ireland too.
Okay.
Ireland and Scotland have rules about single malts or malts and things like that.
Okay.
America's rule with malt is just that, like bourbon, it's 51% of a specific grain, barley. And so technically in America, you could have a single malt, because single doesn't mean anything in American. You could, the word's voluntary.
Sure.
But you could have a malt whiskey in America that's only 51% barley.
Fine, so quickly, the malting, like what is starting with, this is the malting process, so starting with, we got some grains.
We got some grains, we're gonna add some water, we're gonna heat them up, they're gonna start to think, oh, it's time to grow.
Now, hold on, do we need to actually grind up these grains?
Nope,
Just throw them in?
leave them in there.
All right, you're gonna heat them up with some water.
Then we dry them.
Dry.
That's where peat smoke usually comes in, if there is peat.
Either
now, the reason is you want to stop it in the malting process before it eats all its own sugar and there's nothing to ferment.
Okay, the sugar is what ferments.
Yes, and so you got to stop the malting process. And traditionally that was done with smoke.
Yeah.
Now we can do it with heat, and we don't need smoke. So now smoke is a choice. Then you dry it until it's ready to go. And then you crack it and you turn it into mash. Then you ferment it.
Where's the yeast in there?
Yeast is fermentation.
Yeast is fermentation.
Yeah.
Okay.
You add yeast, that's what creates fermentation.
All right.
Then you distill it in things like this.
We should open a distillery.
Yeah, we should.
Christian Christian O wants to know, what are some... why are some single malts labeled as pure malts?
Oh, that's actually illegal in Scotland now.
Okay.
Pure malt is something that Japan is still using because they don't have the laws against it. But my memory tells me that it was Cardew.
Okay.
So Cardew Distillery at one point started blending together things and then releasing it as a pure malt instead of single malt. And that's what sent everyone into an uproar about the word pure malt, and that it was misleading to the public.
Okay.
And instead of calling it a blended malt.
Chris Griep, are there different species of barley that can be malted?
Yes,
If
lots.
so, do distillers take advantage of this to give different flavors?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. What is the maltiest a malt can be? Lewis Clark answers Mike Lissack. 7 malts.
7 malts. That's the maltiest. That's 42. That's the answer.
How long does it typically take in the malting process to go from, we got just a grain, then we're doing the heat, and
it's days.
Okay. Paul Glimba says, do different strains of yeast affect the end product?
Yes. I will tell you that Americans are obsessed with yeast. They take it very seriously.
Right.
Scotland Not typically. They sort of just view yeast as something that gets the job done.
Sure.
Not as something that's proprietary or all that important.
Right.
You say that to a bourbon guy, he will flip out.
Okay.
They've got like proprietary yeast strains they have stored in safes and cryogenically frozen.
Right.
And in Scotland, there was friends of ours that went on a tour and saw the bags of yeast over by the restrooms. And it was just like open and you just got like a shovel. It's like shovel some yeast into there. Because it's just like, well, what kind of yeast you guys use? You know, yeast.
Why don't more Americans make single malts, asks Nathan Garrison.
I don't know. Maybe it's because they actually are Americans making an American spirit. As the craft movement expands, you're getting more and more whiskey lovers in distilleries who would love to make their own single malts. Like us.
Kevin Smith, this final question here. Thank you for your questions in the tribe. This episode's really long.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith, when will single malts stop dragging their feet and commit already? What the hell is that?
It's a scooter.
It's my scooter.
No.
You just got a black version of my scooter.
No, it's better.
How is it better?
It's so much better.
What?
Well, it's got Bluetooth connection from my phone so I can play music.
Right.
Yeah, it's got an oxygen tank holder that I'm currently using for a second water bottle, so I can actually go further in the desert than you.
Yeah.
It's got a safety flag.
For safety.
And it's got a passenger seat with a sissy bar.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You know what I got?
Yeah, but you didn't do that.
So what? Even better.
That was done by the tribe.
Right. Here's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Because this is not an old man scooter. I'm already disappointed.
Oh.
Now to establish who does in fact have the superior scooter, we're going for a race. Now, how much do you weigh?
160 pounds.
I weigh 210 pounds.
Okay, so you're gonna get like a handicap?
Yes, how much of a head start?
No, you don't get a head start.
No, I get a head start.
A scooter's a scooter.
No, I get a really big head start. How big's the head start?
Right there. There's your head start.
All right, we're racing.
3, 2.
Fuck you. Yeah! Oh shit! This is really fast. Oh my god! Oh, I gotta brake. I gotta brake. Oh shit! One-handed. Oh fuck. Okay. No traffic. We're good. Oh, take the corner. Woo! You're so far behind.
Oh no!
You suck. Oh come on, you corner. Shit. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Don't get out. Oh, it's very skitty. Oh, yeah. No contest. Look at that.
Trying to give it a boost.
I dub thee the garbage pile. All right, what are we naming Daniel's scooter? What's he scoot on? All right, taste that. What's that taste like?
Defeat.
No. My dust.
Sounds kind of sour.
My dust.
Did you?
Dude, inappropriate. That went so.
I don't know where that came from.
That went so far beyond.
This is why I don't joke.
It's like it's 0 to. Oh my god, that's Daniel's level of humor.
That's the things I don't verbalize.
Okay, so the whiskey quest that we have.
Yes.
Our community members of the Whiskey Tribe in the Patreon. We're designing whiskeys. The very first whiskey is a single malt of magnificence. They were voting on what kind of single malt we're doing. What was the winner?
The winner was around 40% with peated American malt.
Peated American malt.
Which was unnerving because I didn't yet have a plan for where we were going to get peated American malt.
So the one option
that everybody wanted
that you didn't have a plan for.
I did have a plan, but it fell through. And so that left us in a quandary. And so we were hanging out with some people, and Ty from Andalusia was there. And I was telling him, I need to find somebody to peat some American malt.
Andalusia is a whiskey distillery.
It's a whiskey
here
distillery just south of us.
Okay.
and he said, hey, we figured out how to peat our own malt.
Right.
So we can do it for you if you want. We're gonna use, they use Irish peat at Andalusia.
Sure.
So that's what we're gonna use for the peat.
Okay.
But we're gonna source our malt from Blacklands here in the US.
Blacklands.
Blacklands Malt.
This is the barley.
And Blacklands Malt is a Texas malt facility.
That squeak is the flag, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
It's getting really squeaky.
Where's my photo? There it is. Okay. Oh, we won't talk about it?
We'll do this in a Patreon video.
Yeah. We'll tell you what malt you're gonna choose between.
Yeah, it'll be in the
Patreon video.
Yes. Last thing, we kept selling out of merch every time we mentioned it. So we're doing a pre-order now.
Yep.
Because it felt really bad every time we say, hey guys, cool merch. And then within like 45 minutes, it was all gone. So whiskygenius.com, the link's in the description below. There's 3 things that are the merchy bits for pre-order. We'll be shipping in like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yep.
So you didn't bring a whiskey?
No.
I brought
I was
a
busy
Gatorade.
racing.
Oh
God, I'm not drinking Gatorade.
I poured you a little bit.
No, I hate Gatorade.
You have to have something to drink during the toast, Daniel.
No, I'm good.
You don't respect the toast?
Wait, hang on a second. See?
Here's to fighting, stealing. What?
Here's the fighting. Someone show what you're gonna do. That's why I put the cap back on.
So here's to fighting, stealing, and drinking.
If you fight, may you fight for a friend.
Steal, may you steal a lover's heart.
And if you drink, may you drink with us.